a wonderful speaker, Dr. Christine Coons, here with us today. She is going to be giving a lecture on human and gender development from an affirming and diverse perspective. I appreciate, again, all of you for coming here today. A couple of things for how today's event is going to run. We are going to have a lecture portion to begin the event, and then we are going to have about a 10-minute intermission in between the lecture and the Q&A. So that will give you the opportunity to, again, go to the refreshments table, get seconds, thirds, fourths, whatever you want. And then at the back, we have a table for our Q&A. You'll fill out just a blank index card with your question, put it in the basket, and then we'll be reading out the questions and our speaker will be answering them. So I will go ahead and introduce our speaker and then we will proceed with the lecture. Dr. Christine Coons, D-O-F-A-C-O-I, she, her, is an internal medicine physician practicing as a hospitalist in Spokane, Washington. Dr. Coons has been practicing in the area since 2014. Dr. Coons is transgender and formally transitioned in 2022. She is also intersex and since 2021 has been extensively involved with national and even international organizations and universities. She has lectured and assisted various government organizations and is also involved in a multi-organizational research project regarding care of intersex individuals. Dr. Coons offers a compassionate, science-backed overview of human sex development, gender identity, and the natural diversity found in both. Drawing from embryology, genetics, neuroscience, and historical context, Dr. Coons explores how biology defies binary categories and how intersex and gender diverse identities are part of this human spectrum. This session is perfect for those seeking to better understand the science behind sex and identity, dismantle myths with empathy and evidence, and foster more informed, inclusive communities. Without further ado, I turn the time over to Dr. Christine Coons.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to see you all, meet you all, and just, wow, just actually feel a lecture in person, up close and personal. I'm enjoying this space immensely just because it's more intimate. And I just gave a lecture a couple weeks ago down in Utah in front of about 1,200 people, and felt a little distant. So I'm really grateful to actually be here, to actually have this opportunity. I'm grateful for those who helped to set this up. So I'm hopeful that this is a learning opportunity, that it's engaging, that you feel seen, heard, and that you can take away some tools to not only help yourself, but those around you. So that's the goal for this whole entire project is, how do I help the individual? How do we see differently? How do we expand on the things that we actually have learned in the past? Oh, that's me. So I very much am doing this on PowerPoint, so I'm sorry over there. I really tried hard to get that projector to do what I wanted it to do. It didn't. So learning opportunities for next year, or next time. So I put a disclaimer up here just to say, for many, the discussion of sex, identity, expression, and orientation is a sensitive topic, and for others, very passionate about this approach. Who's here on social media? Every once in a while I go on social media and I actually just try to get a feel of what's talked about, what people are bringing up, questions that are being presented, and just want to break down all these topics in such a way as like, why are we saying that? What is the things that are underneath this that help to us to expand our understanding such that we can walk away and go, oh, I see better. The science of this is ever evolving. So what I'm actually talking about today, what I've actually presented today, will change over the next coming months because this is a learning process. As you see here, I have lots of books. I intentionally brought a lot of books because this is my foundation. I brought my library. This is not my entire library. My wife will attest to that. I've been on a book buying binge, and she can attest to that too. That's where our money goes. There have been massive advancements in technology. And I think that's one of the things that we're contending with is this outdated stuff that we're contending with new stuff. And what I want to do is give you the updated, leading edge technology of what we're actually seeing and understanding in human diversity. Consequently, this is intended to be a safe space. I want this to be a safe space. I want this to be people hearing and listening and understanding themselves better. So I'm a native to the Pacific Northwest. I'm on the west side, not the east side, the west side. Long-standing history of gender dysphoria. I remember my first experiences with gender dysphoria was probably about 7, 8 years old, though that history and remembrance is kind of fuzzy. My coping mechanism was overworking, and for those that have worked with me in the hospital, they can attest to that. My wife will attest to that, and she's actually sitting right there, by the way. This is my wife, Laura. She's here as my moral support. I like Legos, I like boating, I like building, I like music, I like a lot of different things. I engage in a lot of different things. And one of the things that's interesting about me is I have a reduced sense of smell. There are some things I simply cannot smell. This is actually part of a genetics of who I am in terms of intersex. And what happened, this is called Coleman syndrome. So one of the developmental processes that happens in every human is the pituitary gland has to travel to its intended location. The pituitary gland is this little small gland that sits right between your eyes, right behind it. And in the process of doing that, it actually brings olfactory nerves along for the ride. If it's not successful in doing that, you have either a diminished sense of smell or no smell at all. So if you have an underdeveloped pituitary gland, the rest of the body in terms of sexual development doesn't work as well either. So hence part of who I am. So the gene process that's involved with me is this one right here, FGFR1. It has caused other problems as well. No, not just the smell, but it also caused problems with my bones and nerves as well. So as you see me speak, you can probably see this apparent shake like that. It's related. Here's a diagram of that process of the pituitary developing. It's expanding out into the region of behind the eyeballs. There are a lot of genes involved in that process. So I use myself as an example of this entire process because it is complicated. And to actually see somebody in real time, real person, makes a huge difference and go, oh, I had no idea. There's a lot involved in this. And the answer is yes. Yes, there is. So how did I figure out the smell thing? This is our cat, Lucy. She is a furball. She is a cuddle bug. She is super sweet. One day, we were walking out of the master bedroom, Laura and I, and she got this big, massive smell of cat. And I'm standing there going, I don't smell cat, but okay, I trust you. And then afterwards, I go down the hallway because I was going to clean up said cat because I didn't smell it, she could. I'm being helpful. So I get into the litter box, and the litter box actually wasn't that bad. The litter box actually had a couple of nuggets that we needed to clean up. That was fine, that was not a problem whatsoever, but the waste container was full. So I needed to change out the waste container. So that's not a problem. I've done it before many, many times. We have a cat, this is just part of the process. So I open up the container and look at this wall of stuff because the liner had ripped. So here I am looking at this wall of stuff going, why can't I smell that? Where other people can smell it down the hallway, I could not. And so the next thing we had to do, of course, is my oldest daughter has a stack of candles. We had to test every single one of them. There was like, what, 5 that I could actually smell?
She had like 40 candles.
She had 40 candles. She's crazy. Apparently she was crazy, but yeah, there was about 4 or 5 that I really smelled really well, and most of them were just like this undertones and stuff like that. Anyway. So I also wanted to show you that my expertise in this, it goes beyond just the textbooks. This is a lot of research that goes into this process. These are some of the tools that I use on a regular basis. PubMed is a publishing site that's put together by the National Institute of Health. It's a journal searching database. It's incredibly powerful, and it helps me with the tools of just figuring things out. For example, if I wanted to look up the study that just has the term transgender in it, I would look that up. Guess how many studies there are? Over 17,000. If you want to look up intersex, we're talking thousands upon thousands of journal articles here. Gene.io Bio is a tool that you can use to analyze genes in and of themselves. I love that tool. It's actually really cool. So if you ever get a whole genome study of your DNA, you can actually insert it into this tool, and it'll help you understand any variations that you have. ClinVar will actually connect that to that database, and you can go from there. Anyway, lots of tools, lots of cool stuff to look into. Here's a list of some of the books that I use. Most of them are right here. So now we're getting to the real crux, the meat. Now I will tell you that this is a very science-heavy discussion. I'm gonna nerd talk like crazy because I love it. But we need to get some background. So I love this quote from Maya Angelou: "You can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been." We have to look back in the past and say, what has happened back then, and how does that help us understand things now, and how does that help us progress forward to make the necessary changes that need to be done. So here are some clues. LGBTQIA has always been there. It has not been used, the terms LGBTQIA have not always been used. That's actually a nuance from the 1980s, 1990s. I believe it's 1996. It's expanded from there. The concept has evolved. Our understanding has evolved. But when you look back, you get these pictures of what's going on. So the top middle one is a pottery sherd from the Greek mythology, just showing an androgynous individual. The one to the right is Cainus, who was assigned female at birth, raped by Poseidon, and as a wish that was granted to them, they were granted one wish as a consequence of this horrible act, and the wish they wished for was to be transformed into a boy. The one down in the lower right-hand corner is the Isle of Lesbos, two lesbians kissing. The one in the middle is from the Qing Dynasty in the 1600s. It's titled Two Men Being Observed, I think is what it is. But I could be wrong with that one. And then the middle one down below is a two-spirit individual. I believe that one's from 1886. So this is not new. These concepts are not new. Now we understand them differently today than back then, but this crosses history, this crosses the world, this crosses time. This is a map that was produced by PBS.org. You can look it up, it's Two Spirits map. This is just a gender diverse map. These are cultures that recognize more than two genders. It's all across the world. My favorite one to point out to people is the one in outer Russia, completely isolated from the rest of the world, and yet we have a gender diverse culture. The next one is interesting as well. So even religious texts and perspectives have tried to understand as well. So this is something that actually has traversed even theology. And I use the references to for example, the Bible in Matthew 19, Deuteronomy 23, and Isaiah 53. The Talmud is a historical reference to Jews. They recognize 7 or 8 genders depending on which perspective you take. Two spirits in Native American culture. You have Greek and Roman mythology, and even Egyptian mythology. This is everywhere. The big question that I wanted to answer was, why? Why on earth are we seeing all of this? Why is this happening? And I wanted to get down to the brass tacks of the science behind it. And that's why you're here, because you wanted to hear just that. So I'm going to segue into kind of more modern discoveries. The microscope was discovered in 1590. That is kind of small, isn't it? I will make these slides available, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
1677, sperm was discovered in 1677, and initially were thought to contain miniature humans. So just basically shrink a human, put it in the sperm cell, and that's what they thought was going on. It was called a homunculus, by the way. So mammalian ova was discovered in the ovary in 1827. The combination of egg and sperm was visualized in 1876. That is not that long ago.
No.
And that's one of the things that you're going to appreciate with this next slide is most of this stuff is relatively new. For example, Charles Darwin and Gregor Mendel, late 1800s. The discovery, chromosomes were first discovered in 1882. Sex chromosomes were first recognized in 1906. Just over 100 years ago. Guess what we got really excited about 100 years ago? This is the answer. Sex chromosomes are the answer. By the way, I have those books. Wow. This one right here is Mendeliism by Reginald Punnett. Wow. Who remembers Punnett squares? Who hated Punnett squares? That comes from this book. This one's 1911. This one's The Origin of Species from Charles Darwin. Let's see. The Punnett square was discovered also in 1906. And Klinefelters, when somebody has XXY, was 1942 with actual recognition of the extra chromosome in 1956. We did not discover the S or Y or SOX9 gene until 1996. Okay, that is the gene on the inside of the Y chromosome that is the key, the trigger, if you will, for male development. 1996. The Human Genome Project was completed in the year 2000. It actually wasn't formally completed until 2022. And the reason why it actually took that long is it actually was the fault of the Y chromosome. The reason why is because the Y chromosome has a lot of repeated sequences on it, and they did not have the technology to break that down and put it back together again until 2022. Wow. That is how recent this stuff is. I love this slide a lot, and I know it's really small, so I'm going to actually go into detail a little about this. So part of what we need to do to understand the science behind this is actually look at language, what we use in terms of language. So I went back and looked at the dictionaries, and I said, what is the definition of male and female according to history? People are arguing about this left and right in modern time. Let's go back. So I went back to 1617. The title of this dictionary is A Table Alphabetical Containing and Teaching the True Writing and Understanding of Hard, Usual English Words. These are the hard words. There's about 2,500 words in here. Male, by the way, is not to be found in this dictionary. Female is defined as the she in mankind or other. That's very specific. That is incredibly helpful. Did you guys understand that definition? Was that helpful to you? No. But when you look at this definition, you can see the kind of social aspect of this definition. They are looking at somebody and they're saying female, she, other. Okay? So let's fast forward to Webster's Dictionary, 1828. This is the era of the Enlightenment. So they're getting really excited about how to define these words and put this all into perspective in science and stuff like that. You know, the American Revolution wasn't that long ago. So they got super excited about this stuff. And it's 1828 when we started putting into the definition of pertaining to the sex that procreates young and applied to animals of all kinds, a male child, a male beast, fish, or fowl. Female, among animals, one of that sex which conceives and brings forth young. We see this evolution of a social paradigm to, we're really trying to understand this, but we don't understand it completely. You can see the further evolution farther on. Notice it's getting longer. There's the definition in real. That's the photocopy. So it is right there. It's so clear. So our modern perspective of sex is based on traditions, culture, theology, evolving science, appearance, behavior, language, experiences, knowledge, perception, and expectations. You try to sum all that into one word, that's a lot. So we went from this social paradigm of female, and we started stacking all these definitions, all these criteria on top of each other. Well, what are we running into now? We're trying to actually kind of like sift through all these weeds of trying to understand what on earth is going on. So as a consequence of that, there is no universal definition of sex. Notice I am not saying biological sex. I really hate that, by the way. It's sex. Call it what it is. It has always been gray area in society, science, and history. There have always been exceptions. Forcing a definition has only caused problems and harm. Definitions have changed over time. External appearance doesn't always represent internal processes. I want that to really sink in really hard. External appearance does not dictate what's happening internally. Our language has limits. So we're breaking down the problems here. We're taking language as a nuance that's happening with all this. So how do we build back up? Well, Martin Yan said you can do almost anything with soup stock. It's like a strong foundation. When you have the right foundation, everything tastes good. Okay, so let's build up a foundation. Let's try to actually piece this together in such a way that is accessible to everyone. Not only the sex diverse individual, but the gender diverse individual. How do we piece this together to make it work? So what happens on social media? Well, what happens is you get this statement that people will say, sex is based off of sex chromosomes. It's XX and XY. And then the next thing that somebody comes along and says is, well, what about intersex individuals? Well, what happens? They're pivoting. They say, well, it's the gonads, or it's external anatomy, it's your sex assigned at birth. It's pivoting from one spot to another. So when you look at this list, I came up with this list, I just said, all right, let's take every single word or association I can come up with sex and put it on this slide. My wife told me that, how many times do you put the word sex on one slide? Apparently a lot. There's a lot of ways to perceive and perspective on this topic. So what I did is I said, I needed to get down to this brass tacks. How do we weed through all of this and get down to the real person underneath this? So I started with this diagram a couple of years ago. And what I did is I took these primary sex characteristics, which are in the middle, and on the outside of it you have two categories. One of them is genetics, and one of them is development. So there's these pathways. It's not just one thing, it's all the things together. There's a whole bunch of pathways that go into this. Notice I didn't say chromosomes, I said genetics. We're talking thousands upon thousands of genes involved in this process. A couple years ago, they did a study on mice, and they said, okay, what genes are active during gonadal development between the testes and the ovaries? Well, the difference between them was about 50 different genes, but the total that were active during that process was about 6,000 each. So is it just the Y chromosome? Is it just the X chromosome? Absolutely not. Never has been. So the structures in between are the gonadal tissue, the hormones, the adrenal glands, the internal anatomy, the brain. Brain is a sex organ. Everyone knows that, right? Oh, good. The pituitary gland, gametes, external anatomy, and what you can see with this is I really wanted to actually try to convey, I put a gradient on these, that they developmentally can change, they're different from person to person, and that they relate to each other. That one, if there's an effect on one, it can affect other structures as well. So it's not just, again, one thing, it's all the things. Have I included everything that needs to be involved with this? Nope. There are other structures, there's other things that are involved that I have not included that are variable from person to person. What I did here is just list a whole bunch of the structures that are involved in those, just to define those a little bit better. So the next thing I did is I went into an embryology book and I said, okay, let's start at the beginning. It's a good place to start. I'm glad you got that reference. When sperm meets egg, what's going to happen? Well, the developing embryo does not care, the zygote does not care what its reproductive organs are at this point. It is combined, it is in the fallopian tubes. What is its most important priority next? It's to get to the uterus, to get to the implantation stage. That's its next step. That's its survival. The next step after that is actually, again, not reproductive organs. It's actually direction. It has to orient itself in space. Up, down, left, right, front, and back. We're going to turn into a human with arms, legs, and every other structure involved. These are the foundational structures that we are all a part of that happen in every single human. Again, those reproductive organs are later down the pipe. What's next? Nutrition, the GI tract. It's called gastralization. This is where the opening opens up here and opening back there. The next thing after that is the heart, the lungs, the brain is evolving in the process of all this. And at the very end of all that are these sex structures. So I'm going to segue into this next diagram. This is a very important diagram that I think is going to be helpful for a lot of people. And I hope what this diagram does is it gives you the tools to understand and counter some of the arguments that are happening in the world today. I like this slide. There's a lot of slides that I actually really like. But the way to think about this, okay, is we talked about this foundation. We all have this foundation that we're working on together. Heart, lungs, brain, the axes of the arms, legs, everywhere in between. We have conception here. I call this the common development pathway. I'm going to explain these two structures here in just a second, but this happens between the first 0 to 8 weeks of life. Now, some people will argue that sex determination happens here. No. Sex differentiation happens here. There's nothing determined at the point of conception. Now, this is a really cool part. This is where really cool stuff happens. Okay? So the mesonephros and the paramesonephros. These are primordial sex structures. They are both present in every human at the same time in a developing fetus. They are both there. Yes, that means that if you were assigned male at birth, you carry remnants of female development, and vice versa. Actually, if you look in an anatomy book, which I have right here, you still carry some of those structures with you. So one of them is called the appendix testes, and this can cause problems with testicular torsion. And the other one is Gardner ducts in assigned female at birth. So we still carry some of these structures with us. So what has to happen? Well, the mesonephros has to move forward if you're going to be assigned male at birth, while the other one regresses. So one has to move forward at the expense of the other. Same thing down here. This one has to move forward at the expense of this one. Does it always work? Is it always successful? Does it always go to completion? The answer is no. Does it vary from person to person? The answer is absolutely yes. Can this affect brain development? Yes, and you'll see that later. So I'm going to show another set of slides, another diagram that shows the genes involved. This is a very simplified diagram. So what is that differentiation process? It's this guy right here, SOX9, the one that was discovered in 1996. So it's not the Y chromosome. It's not the S or Y gene, which is on the Y chromosome. It's what happens with this guy. And it's not always even this guy. SOX9 is on chromosome 17. Last time I checked, everyone has a chromosome 17. SOX9 is actually under tension. It's there present. It's under lock and key, if you will. Because it's on chromosome 17, there's actually a lot of genes that are repressing it. A whole bunch of genes that are repressing it. If one of those genes does not do a good job of repressing it, can it release inadvertently? Oh yeah. Does it always have to have the S or Y gene to unlock it? No, not at all. And you'll see that a little bit later. What's also really cool with this, I put in here gonadal cell migration. The gonadal cells don't actually show up just there and start developing. They actually have to travel, which I think is just really cool. They're undifferentiated, so testes and ovaries derive from the same cells. They are the same cells. And this just shows it a little bit more in real time. One has to move forward at the expense of the other. move forward, regress. So as a consequence of that, you can envision this as a non-binary situation. How we doing? Everyone holding together? Having fun? Yes! I love it. This is one of my favorite books right here. Human Embryology and Developmental Biology. I love this one. I love this one so much that I actually pulled a quote from it that I thought was very helpful. The story of gonadal development is one of molecular tension. That's SOX 9, it's under tension. Mainly an inhibition of competing molecular drivers. It's holding it down in place. Between determinants of ovarian and testicular differentiation. This tension continues after birth. It doesn't stop at conception, it doesn't stop at birth. To maintain the health of those organs, these genes have to still be active. So it's not static. One of the words that I always use with my medical students is dynamic. We humans are entirely dynamically changed from moment to moment to moment, which is super cool. You are not the same tomorrow as you are today, and you're not the same as yesterday to today. We can genetically track that. So I love it. It's page 404 if you're interested in buying that book. So in terms of genetics, we have these layers that we have to sift through. And most of us have actually been taught about the chromosomes. We spend a lot of time there in high school, and that's usually where we stop. Is that where this stops? No. It goes way deeper. It goes way more depth and complexity. So we have genes, which underlie that. We have DNA sequences. We have epigenetics. And to be honest, I've actually even read some studies that are looking into quantum mechanics with this as well. So guess how complicated this just got? Incredibly complicated, astronomical. One of the numbers that I love to point out to people is the human genome from DNA sequence from one end to the other is about 3.1 billion base pairs. That's split up between all the chromosomes, but there's 4 base pairs. So if you were to extrapolate statistically the randomness, the diversity that humans carry, it's 4 to the power of 3.1 billion. I just broke brains in computers. That's how diverse we are. And we're allowed to be diverse. It's inherent to our process. Oh, by the way, I put it on this slide. So variation in the number of chromosomes is called aneuploidy. There are tens of thousands to billions of different proteins. Duplication and transcription are not perfect. Basically, when a cell divides into another cell, is it perfect? No. There are there's tens of thousands of errors that do happen, or variations, would be better said. And do the chromosomes split evenly? No. If I were to take any one person in this room and do a biopsy of the liver, of the brain, or any other structure in the body, 5% of your cells, on average, are aneuploid. It's a very common process as we get older, and we actually measure this. And there is 2 terms that we use. One's mosaic loss of the Y chromosome. So as you age, you lose the Y chromosome. And there's a mosaic loss of the X chromosome. So this just happens naturally. This is the other slide. Told you it was coming. So right in the middle, I'm going to walk you through this slide. So I told you about chromosome 17, SOX 9 right there in the middle. So as you can see, this is under lock and key. WNT4 is repressing it. RSP01 is repressing it. FOXL2 is repressing it. Notice it's not just the S or Y. There's a whole series of genes involved in this process to activate S or Y. Let that sink in for a little. It's not just this one gene as a key that goes, I'm going to do and activate this process. No, there's a whole series of them. So once SOX 9 gets activated, it auto-activates itself. It goes into overdrive. In the process of going into overdrive, it produces that one up there, the AMH, stands for anti-Mullerian hormone. The other name for the paramesonephros is the Mullerian ducts. So anti-Mullerian hormone represses the Mullerian ducts. You can kind of see how this is happening in real time. So again, you have to activate one way and repress the other way. It's incredibly complicated, which makes it so cool. You all hold it together? So SOX9 is, I do this in quotations, is the major gene that affects sex differentiation. Again, I don't say determination, because it doesn't determine anything. SOX9 is a highly conserved gene across vertebrates. This is what's really cool about SOX9. This system of development can be actually found across different species that may be very surprising to you. For example, alligators. But they actually have a different method of differentiation. It's based off of water temperature, not chromosomes. The other one that I really love is the platypus. Harry the platypus. Everyone gets that one, right? So the platypus has 5 X's and 5 Y's. Birds actually have a different process than mammals. Their ZY is their female and ZZ is their male. Bees are different, polygenic sex. I mean, this whole entire process is diverse across the animal kingdom. So where does intersex individuals fit in the process of all this? So understanding intersex requires us to understand sex genetics, development, and diversity. We have to actually appreciate that they're allowed to exist. We are allowed to exist on our own terms. To some degree, everyone is intersex because we all have a developmental commonality. We all have structures that are in common, depending on how they have developed or not developed. Intersex is more common than we think. And the reason why it's more common than we think is mostly just based off of definitions. This process that I showed you in terms of development is variable from person to person to person. There is no static cutoff. As a consequence of that, you can define intersex, you can define female, male, all these terms in various different ways just based off of where you're moving the goalpost. Intersex individuals can be fertile. This happens actually more often than you think. So, I made a list.
Wow.
This is a list of the variations of sexual development. I have enumerated about 100 plus. This is actually part of the project I'm working on with these universities, is to make this accessible and informative to actually connect people to not only their diagnosis, but treatments. As a consequence, I extrapolated that list to this one. This is a list of the genes involved in sex development. Mine is somewhere in there. This render definitely, usually it's up over there. Yeah. I know a lot of people that have variations of these individual genes. Can this individual gene affect somebody who is gender diverse? Yes, it can. Which is actually the segue into talking about gender identity. This has a lot of meaning to me, especially with trying to help people in this process. Gender identity is a relationship. Now, the Oxford Dictionary uses this definition: a person's innate sense of self. I go back to the female definition. This is about as helpful. Your innate sense of self. Which, I mean, to be honest, I mean, we have to give ourselves credit. There is this part of our bodies, that are part of ourselves, that is innate, inherent to us, but we actually relate it to other things. And you'll see that. Now, I purposely worded this statement to be very confusing. Gender identity is a relationship of inputs and outputs from the body, the inputs, outputs, and processing of the brain. It is a relationship of expected and unexpected results from these signals in relation to how the body develops over time. So think of it this way. The brain is up here. It has to relate to the entire body. It sends out signals, body sends signals back. It has to interpret those signals in real time, real space. That is why I can hold out my hand and say my hand is up over here and I'm wiggling my fingers. But it has to also process the development of our bodies in terms of sexual development. What has happened below here does not always reflect what has happened up here. To help show that diagram, I have more diagrams. You can tell I love this. This is a representation of neuron pathways in the brain. And this is only a small subset. This is, if you go to the highest of the mountains.com, you can actually look at this. You actually can buy a poster of this. But the way to think about this is in terms of our identity, our sexual orientation, our sexual expression, it's all up here. There are actually centers of the brain that affect this, are diverse. Again, we have this commonality of development. It has to differentiate what's happening to the individual. Now, in terms of sexual orientation, we can actually do a better job of measuring the structures inside the brain that are doing this. It's the whole brain, by the way. There's more focus in certain areas, but we can't really do gender identity very well. And the reason being is because we can't ask an animal, what is your gender identity? That's kind of hard to do. So it kind of remains this nebulous subject that people are trying to decipher. And so what we actually end up having to do is, again, come up with these relationships. How do we relate to one thing versus another? This is another cool diagram. Researchers mapped the neurons in the fruit fly in October 2024. So there are 150,000 neurons and 50 million connections in the fruit fly brain. There are 85 billion neurons in the human brain and 100 trillion connections. So, is gender identity part of that 100 trillion? Yes. Sexual orientation part of that 100 trillion? Yes. Your expression? Yes. Everything about you is involved with that 100 trillion. Does that allow you to exist? Oh, yes. Here's a couple of the studies that were talking about sexual orientation. The areas of the brain that seem to be most associated with this is the subcortical septal region, hypothalamus, ancilla reticularis, and pallidus, and frontal, cortical frontal, parietal, and temporal lobes. Like I said, a lot of the brain. Gender identity was studied in 2020 and seems to be centered around the vent nucleus of the stria terminalis and third interstitial nucleus of the anterior hypothalamus. Try saying those things 10 times fast. I had to go through 4 years of medical school to even pronounce those things. Really what it boils down to is it's the center of the brain. It's this system right here, the limbic system, that is involved with a lot of the things that make us who we are. So we're usually used to seeing the brain like this. We're going deep inside the brain. We're actually going into the center. So olfactory bulb, guess where the pituitary sits? Right there. Guess where it affected me? Right there. Okay? Sexual attraction, sexual orientation is right here. Guess what it's close to? The occipital lobe. Pheromones, olfactory bulb, pituitary gland are related to the hypothalamus. So a lot of these structures center around the hypothalamus. What does the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland do? Help govern your sexual activity. Whole diagram, huh? So, as a consequence of this immense variability, can we represent every individual on the spectrum of LGBTQIA+? The answer is yes. I can demonstrate everyone's existence along these spectrums. So gender identity appears associated with numerous factors. Yes, it can be associated with genes. It can be associated with epigenetics, hormones, hormone balance, and even immunology. There's a lot of variables in this. So I get this question a lot as gender diverse individuals come up to me and say, hey, can I do a gene study and figure out myself? The answer is you could. It's really hard to do. It took me about 7 months to actually figure out myself, and that was me as a doctor. And I actually could get like the studies and the labs and stuff like that that I needed. There is no trans gene. Well, I've already demonstrated to you all that there are thousands. There's no one gene involved in this. There's numerous. It's polygenic. This is also another slide I recently built. I used this one. Where did I get this one?
Looking hot biochemistry, right?
That would look hot. So that would be that one. So this is the regulation of genes. This is where all the variables can come into play. So it's not just the fact that a gene has a variation on it, it's how it's activated over time. This also affects DNA. It's not just the genetic layer, it's the gene, the chromosome layer, the epigenetics, how things move through time. Again, dynamic. One of the ways I represent this is with this slide. So there are parts of the brain that are active for certain things. We have regions of the brain that do certain things. For example, movement of the hands. There's regions of the brain that do that. There's areas of the brain that are involved in speech and reading. Since my speech is getting befuddled, mine's not working so well. But that's Broca's area. Frontal lobe is speech. Wernicke's area of the temporal lobe is language comprehension. Gender identity and sexual orientation are located in the limbic system. That's the center of the brain. Sex differentiation of the brain is influenced by hormonal and genetic pathways, the epigenetics, and all this stuff involved. When I actually sat down and looked at, say, is the SRY gene active in the brain? The answer is no. So the Y chromosome in terms of sex differentiation is not active in the brain. So what else is active? Well, hormones. Hormones have to travel from where they're developing to the brain, and to get there, there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's this window of opportunity that is going to lead to the differentiation of the brain itself. So when you start the gonads, how much, let's say, testosterone is produced, the timing of production, the rate of release, the pattern of release. Is it a stutter? Is it a continuous rate? Is it starting high, going low? Is it starting low and then going high? All these variables exist. Now it has to get through the bloodstream. Then it has to get to the brain. Then it has to go through the blood-brain barrier. So the function of receptors, distribution of receptors, number of receptors, and production of receptors. So hormones cannot get into the cell DNA without help. They have to have a receptor. So for example, testosterone, to get into the brain cells, there's an androgen receptor. There are individuals out there with androgen insensitivity or androgen resistance. That's actually the gene, the protein that's involved in that process. So how do we care for these individuals? Well, the answer is variations of identity, expression, orientation, and sex are biologically natural and expected. We can demonstrate that through history, we can demonstrate that through science, we can even demonstrate it through math. How we approach this diversity is up to us as a society. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. Well, we can take three different approaches. One, we can say, well, it's an essentialist sort of perspective, this strict binary. Well, there's problems with that because there's variability that exists naturally. On the extreme side of that, there's pluralism, which says, well, let's just get rid of the whole notion of male and female altogether and just say, birthing parent or lactating parent or things like that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's abolitionism. I got it. Pluralism is somewhere in between. To be honest, we are actually in a pluralistic modality already. It already exists. We recognize intersex individuals. We recognize gender diverse individuals in a lot of different ways. We already exist in this. Now, there's people that are pushing one way or the other. Is it going to go all the way to one end of the extreme or the other? The answer is probably not. But there are people that are trying. Where is the appropriate place to be? To be honest, that's actually a question that I need to work myself out. That's, as a social group, that is something that we need to figure out. Where do we want to be at the end of all this? What is our goal in 10 years? How does this look? Care is individualized, foster safe spaces and community, utilize preferred language, allow for variations of gender expression, psychological care, medical care, and surgical care. It's all involved. What I wish the medical system would understand: don't assume gender identity or sexual orientation. Don't treat me as a medical curiosity. Don't assume I'm ignorant of the function of my body. We aren't rare. There are plenty of people like me. Please don't lie to me or to my parents or advise them not to tell me about my own body. I'm not as fragile as you may think I am. I can handle the truth. Be honest. I have a right to know about my own body. Secrets make me feel like I should be ashamed. So again, where do we go from here? Lots of places to go. Lots of things to work on. And I feel honored and privileged to be a part of that group of people to get things done. So we'll pause there, take a 10-minute break, write out questions, and we'll come back and have seconds, thirds, fifths.
I used to make it simple, terribly
Patients. I may be a hospitalist, I may be an internal medicine doctor, but I'm not God. So let's see if we can figure out some of these. All right. So that's a really good question. Have you wanted to punch someone for using the term hermaphrodite? Or shake with the dick? Yes, I have. It's very frustrating. So again, when we come back to terminology that is used, people use terms to weaponize or demean or cause shame to another person. And so in terms of helping somebody to be more comfortable around you, preferred pronouns, and even in terms of the intersex population, just understanding that how they want to be approached and addressed is very important. It's very respectful. So yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
Would you call the use of the term hermaphrodite an antiquated colloquialism?
It is antiquated. There are individuals that have brought it back and they have attributed it to themselves. So you will find some people that will actually still reference themselves as hermaphrodite. It is not the most common word that is used. Intersex is definitely the most common.
Yeah.
What made you want to be an educator? Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Actually, the thing that really I enjoy the most is the human-to-human interaction. The smiles, the laughter, just that interaction from person to person. So I love learning. I love this. I'm usually found with my notes in a book, and I love just reading through medical journals, and just the thing that excites me about this is being able to affect a change that I can bring to being evidence and say, no, that is incorrect because of X, Y, and Z. So it's for my own education and learning, sure. But when you actually see it affect other people and help them understand themselves better, and society help those around them, that to me is really cool.
She also teaches med students. She loves that.
Very good.
How can we educate school boards who want to deny the existence of transgender students? Kick them in the shins.
The school board.
Yeah. So the challenge with this is, so I mentioned before that this is all cutting edge stuff. Like I said, this book was released just a couple months ago, and this is talking about how we transition research from a demographic of asking male and female questions to more pertinent questions to the research study. Things that are different about you, and recognizing that there are differences in development and genetics from person to person. So we're taking this from this patternistic approach that we've had in the past and individualizing it from person to person.
So that's my question, because that's
Yeah.
happening in real time if somebody's.
That is happening in real time.
Can we have you come with us to
Sure.
some of these meetings?
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I'm happy to talk to people.
Oh my goodness.
I will talk to other people. I have lectured to various states, organizations, departments of health, medical organizations. There was a psychiatric association in Illinois that I connected with. So I've done these types of lectures for different organizations. Even my old residency program has asked me to come back and lecture with them too. Would you recommend someone? Oh, would you recommend someone migrate to a country that is socially acceptable of trans people with universal health care? To be honest, I've actually been debating this myself. So it's where you need to be, is my recommendation. For your own well-being and safety, be where you need to be. As I debated that question myself, I determined that this was a place for me to be, causing a little bit of an uproar and being One of the things that I do with this is a lot of people are nervous about funding from the government. I don't have to worry about that. The stuff I'm doing, I actually fund through myself. A lot of the projects that I've been working on and a lot of the things that I do in terms of lectures, I do just because I love doing what I'm doing. Every once in a while I get an honorarium, but to be honest, it goes right back into buying books. How should you advocate for yourself, your community, if you're worried you're being mistreated when seeking medical care? Oh, this is something I'm working on a lot. As I said, I'm involved with Providence. We are actively involved in teaching providers, nursing staff, caregivers, and everywhere in between. We are actively working on this. Now, does this apply to everyone across the country? No, but in terms of the effect that we're having, Providence covers 8 states. So we are actively moving through all these different organizations and situations to try to better improve the access to care for everybody, especially the gender diverse people and intersex people.
Are you venturing to other hospitals as well, or?
Oh, I've talked to all sorts of different people.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't stop at just Providence.
Are you guys training like patient advocates within those places when you're not present to be able to have that training and move it forward and speak up for people when they need it?
Yeah. So some of the things I'm working on is, presenting slides of how do we affect a change inside our paradigm, our system. A lot of it is how do I train doctors? How do I train medical students? Where do we go to change the textbooks? Because some of these textbooks, the wording is incorrect. It's not, the one that I actually recently did, this monstrosity right here. This is the Principles of Neuroscience. And I read through this and found that the language they used is not correct. And as a consequence, so how do I get to affecting a change on this? Or some of the other books that aren't correct? It's a work in progress. And one of it is just spreading, word of mouth, networking, all the things I'm working on right now. Does that answer that question? Good. If I have a copy of my own genotype, what were the resources you had previously mentioned? Okay, so if I have a copy of my own genotype, what were the resources you had previously mentioned which would detect noticeable genetic variations? The gene.io bio, .io. Sorry. The Gene.io the ClinVar, Verisum are probably the best resources for doing that. It's not easy. There's a lot of, tell you what. Oh no, darn it, I was gonna show you. Let's get out of that. There's sample data that you can use on the Gene. The Gene.io site is actually free. So this is the site. You can load sample data, so run with demo data. You can load your own data into this. It's actually like HIPAA compliant, so it doesn't actually capture anything. So you get a lot of information on this, and sometimes it actually is quite overwhelming. Very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff on there. So being able to interpret it is a lot of work. So there are definitely groups of people. Oh, look, there's an error. And it's still going. Did that answer that question? Yes. The resources, yeah. That would be where I go.
Is that encrypted if you upload your information to it?
It's never stored anywhere.
Okay.
To de-radicalize those who oppose rights due to their ignorance and prejudice, what comes first, education or empathy? To be honest, I think it's empathy. Studies have shown that if you know somebody who is transgender, who is gay or intersex, that you're more likely to be willing to listen. So that's part of the other reason why I'm actually open and vocal about all of this, is because one, I can have the scientific foundation to actually counter a lot of their arguments, and two, they can't argue with my existence.
Doesn't hold back.
Okay, if someone identifies as transgender male and had baseline labs drawn prior to initiating hormone replacement therapy, what could cause the elevated testosterone level? The answer is yes. Usually as a medical provider, we actually come up with a differential diagnosis that we use in coming up with a list of things that we want to look into. Whether that's blood work, labs, things of that nature. So elevated testosterone is just one lab. There's certain causes for it, everything from pituitary gland all the way down. That is actually why I built this slide. Come on, I'm gonna make you guys dizzy again. So when I look at this slide, this helps me build a differential diagnosis of where I would likely find reasons for elevated testosterone. So the pituitary gland is where the control center of this is. The FSH, LH is located. And this is what's going to contribute to the gonads producing the hormones, the adrenal glands, depending on how one person versus another develops. So this just helps me build a differential diagnosis. There's lots of structures involved. There's lots of possibilities. There's lots of genes. So it's not just one thing. It's a lot of potential ideas. Did I answer that question? Sorry, it's not very specific because there's a lot.
It's actually one of my questions I forgot to write down. A transgender Afghan person on testosterone, could they experience like male heart attack symptoms, like chest versus the female flu symptoms, and vice versa?
Yeah, every hormone therapy actually has side effects, and that is one thing I teach my medical students a lot, is you don't know a medication until you know the side effects. And the one that is most consequential for testosterone use is the increased red blood cell mass, which is why people use it to cheat. But it also muscle mass, but also increases the risk of heart attacks. So, but the one most people are most familiar with is the increased red blood cell mass.
Okay, what did you think my question was?
I don't know. Let me get closer.
Could a transgender male experience male heart attacks instead of female ones?
Oh, I see what you're saying. The answer is possibly. I don't know if there's any research studies to promote it, but in terms of heart attack symptoms, yes, there is a difference in terms of presentation among individuals. And recognizing that from person to person is important. Can I definitively say that one person's symptoms of a heart attack are going to be one way or another? I couldn't tell you. Did I do a better job of answering your question? Okay, good. Sorry.
Well, it's actually important information for those to know. For,
Yeah.
What I actually want to know.
I think I know who this is from. You're hot. Will you go out with me?
What's your answer?
I've seen the idea that we should not label assigned sex at birth at all. What are your thoughts on this? I agree. I actually agree. There's lots of reasons for this. I can use one example from the interactions I have with intersex individuals. One of the cases, for example, is like somebody who has mosaic syndrome or mosaic of chromosomes, where one part of their body is XX, the other part's XY, and how would you describe these individuals? We all are mosaics, but they actually have a higher percentage of just mosaic chromosomes in their body. So when somebody comes along and says sex is a binary, how do we describe these individuals? Mm-hmm. It's not fair to force them to be different because of a paradigm. Do you guys want to do some math?
You can do some math.
Go on.
All right. I was actually thinking about this morning. Oh, I can erase that. So a binary system is 2, right? Mm-hmm. Think about computers. It's a whole bunch of ones and zeros.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay? 1, 0. So that is a binary system. These characters have inherent meaning 1 and 0. If I put up this and this, what does that trigger in your mind? Binary, right? No. People try to say it's binary, but does this have inherent meaning to it? You actually have to assign meaning. You have to actually assign different definitions. So in terms of this, female, male, you can actually have people who don't have these structures at all.
Yeah.
So you can actually have a null. You can actually have people that have both. Is that a binary? No. Ones and zeros, that's all the information you get from it. Well, when you assign, for example, male, you got the testes, you got testosterone, you got the XY. You keep assigning a whole bunch of data and information, it's no longer binary. It's multi-dimensional. As you get more multi-dimensional dimensions on dimensions, you are making this more complicated. So in terms of, oh gosh, I think on one of the slides I described a whole list of characteristics. There was about 1 million different variations you can base off of just that list alone. And that was just assuming that it was either this or this. 1 million different variations. So even mathematically, it's not binary.
There are 8 billion.
And one last one, functions. So talking about dynamics, so the function of U is the change of genetics plus development over time. That's you as a function. Now, I can break this down in terms of genetics into all sorts of different layers. Same thing with development. We can go from embryology to adolescence to infancy to everywhere in between. Notice that this does not carry any other descriptive factors. This is just a function. You as a person is individual. Why am I comparing you as an individual to somebody else who's completely different? What is the percentage of intersex people who identify as the sex they were assigned at birth, the opposite, neither, or both? That's actually a really good question. That one's actually complicated, and they've done some studies on that one. That one, for example, if you talk about congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is the adrenal glands kicking out more testosterone, the percentage is, I think, 95% still identify as female, about 5 to 6% identify as male. It's even weirder when you get into like Klinefelters. They did a survey. That one was, I think, 55% as identified as male. Mixtures, non-binary, male or female. It was a huge list. I apologize, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's variable from person to person and condition to condition. I don't like condition. I like to say entity better. But in terms of exact percentages, it's variable from entity to clinical entity to entity. Which also brings up the question about how common is intersex in the general population. And you're going to see a couple of statistics that are out there. One is 1.7%, or roughly 2%, and the other one is 0.006%. That's a huge difference. Guess what the difference is? Definitions. So this 1.7% to 2% is from Anne Faust Sterling. She wrote a book called Sex in the Body, and I did not bring that one. Basically, she took all those conditions or entities that I talked about before, summed them up together, and said, here we go, here's a number. What we're finding is that is even an underestimation. Klinefelters, for example, is based off of the data, is 1 in 300 individuals has Klinefelters. That's underestimated because we don't have they're not diagnosed. They're not identified at birth. They're not recognized until either later in life or potentially never. But they think they underestimate by about 50%. So the 0.006% comes from Leonard Sachs, who basically argued against Anne Faust Sterling and said, no, that's incorrect. If we keep spreading out the spectrum, we're going to confuse people, especially those doctors. Yeah, they got confused. So, yeah, if you see the 0.006, don't believe it.
Oh, I was wondering about your diagram with the SOX 9 for
That one. This one?
Yeah. Is that implying that like most people could technically be considered intersex?
Yes, and that was actually on one of my slides, is most people, I mean, the way we think about intersex is that we carry characteristics from either sexes. Based off of this alone, because we carry each one of these structures, the answer is yes. Technically, we can consider it. Just depends on where we move these goalposts. Does that help answer your question? How does someone get tested for being intersex? Oh. I wish I could tell you how hard this is. So let's have an example of a child that is born with ambiguous genitalia, clear evidence of intersex. We can only identify a genetic cause in 50% of them.
Wow.
It's that hard. And that's actually most recent data, is 50% we can't identify a genetic cause, which goes back to epigenetics and environmental influences. So, is it possible? The answer is yes. Is it ridiculously hard? Yes. Most geneticists nowadays just spend their time with those that are not recognized at birth. They want clear evidence of a congenital problem. If you come to them with a whole genome sequence, they will probably turn you away. And that's more of a culture among geneticists than actual, like, think of it this way, it takes a huge amount of time to actually decipher it, that they don't get reimbursed sufficiently to spend that much time on it. Most of these geneticists will have a team of people that are studying, like genetic counselors and things, that help them in this process. So it's a very time-consuming and laborious process.
Regarding your 0 to 8 weeks, you mentioned like alligators depended on the temperature of the water.
Yeah.
Do you have a percentage here of genetics versus external things?
All I know in terms of, so that is actually where the sex determination term can be used appropriately, is comparing system to system to system. In terms of, when you look up like a sex determination system, you will find the Wikipedia page was really decent at putting it into perspective. Do I have an exact percentage? Most mammals will follow through with this. I'm trying to think if there's any variation, but fish have a lot of variability. Alligators, insects, there's intense variability among them as well. So, yeah.
Sorry, just go back a question or two about the statistics with.
Yes, I'm not.
Yeah, the 1.7%.
Yeah.
So that, I just wanted to clarify, was that based off of a combination of all the known intersex conditions?
Yeah, I think she wrote
or diagnosable intersex conditions.
Yeah, that was based off of a book written in 2000, I think it was 2000 or 2001, somewhere in that time frame.
Okay.
So in terms of like the massive list that I put together, so this is me collecting all this information. Probably what Ann Faust-Sterling did was took about 40 of these, 35 to 40 of these, and list out the epidemiology of them and use that number. So the number is probably higher than we think based off of that, but to come up with an exact number, we have to actually have an exact definition, and we don't have an exact definition of sex or intersex. It's all fuzzy logic.
Sorry, really fast.
Yeah.
Do you have any genetic counselors that you work alongside as far as Providence in the area? I know a few that kind of will let you bring some, especially if it's not like a whole genome sequence, but you have targeted things.
Yeah,
that you...
I don't know anybody, but if you know somebody, I'd be very interested.
Okay. As a mother of a gender diverse human, how do you my thoughts during pregnancy affect growth and development? Oh, so
So like pending a gender reveal party, or you're having this baby. I wrote this question. You have this baby and you don't know what your baby is until you have either your ultrasound or you cut the cake. And what if your thoughts are one over another while your baby's growing and developing? And how do we change that if that's a factor? I guess that's
so. In terms of, you're looking for the health and well-being of your child.
correct.
And what I usually tell people is let the child teach you. At birth, they're not going to be able to teach you a huge amount other than you taking care of them. But as they grow up, listen and respond, and that's kind of where I would lead with it.
Like no thoughts during growth and development of your child, like you know what I mean? Like does say a mother says, oh, I want to have a boy, 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 and then they have a girl. Does that kind of thought process in a growing and developing child like affect their?
I don't believe so.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think so.
I read that in books once when I was
I have read that somewhere.
To be honest, it's because it's more complicated than that.
Sure.
I would be very surprised if that was actually something that would actually happen. So I get this a lot, like when, or I see this a lot with somebody who has a congenital, defect. And I use that intentionally to show that, is it my fault? During this, 9 months of pregnancy, was it the mother's fault that this happened? The answer is no. There's too many variables to assign blame to any one person or anything like that. Sometimes these things just happen, and that's okay. We just need to recognize that that person is an individual, and they need to be respected for that. Did I answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, got a couple more cards left. As an intersex person, was your transition faster since you have more of the preferred parts than an intersex trans person? I took forever. My wife Laura can actually attest to that. From the time I told you in 2014 and fully transitioned in 2022. I took my sweet little time because I was still figuring myself out. So was it faster? No. And I usually recommend that you just go at your own pace. There's no, do it for your own health and well-being. Could I have gone a little bit faster? Probably. There were times when I was younger, I wish I could have done it earlier. But at the same time, I appreciate the experiences I have now, and I also appreciate the relationships I have with the people I do. What are the differences genetically between a cis person with PCOS and an intersex person? This is an ongoing debate about do we count PCOS as an intersex entity? The answer is yes and no. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Can we? Yes. Is it in the common vernacular? No. Should it be part of that? Well, again, it comes down to recognizing the spectrum. Should we recognize it as part of a system that needs to be addressed? Absolutely. So a lot of people, when they have this gender diversity or gender identity variations, they always come to us and say, hey, do I have an intersex condition or an intersex entity? They want to know, and part of it is they want to be able to actually have access to the resources that intersex individuals do. Well, what we're also discovering is that intersex individuals actually have less resources than gender diverse people. So is it helpful for you to actually be diagnosed as intersex? It may or may not be. Does it give you additional power? Not necessarily. Part of what the team that I'm working with is to allow people to get access to the care. So we are actually like fighting tooth and nail to get access to care that is deserved. So it's not just the transgender population, it's everyone is struggling to get care. We're working on that. Gender identity first. So did you figure out your biological sex or gender identity first? Gender identity first, for sure. When I dived into the genetics part, yes, I was curious. I spent about $1,200 on a whole genome sequence. And when I went diving into it, it took me forever to interpret it. And part of the reason behind that is because I actually had to have evidence that would support the genes that I found. And there was about 6 or 7 genes that were of interest. And I actually had to go through each one of them and say, okay, is this one even plausible? It wasn't until I found a journal article from a couple of years ago that put all the pieces together. So because this is so rapidly advancing, this is part of the reason why we can't find the genetic cause of 50% of those populations. It's really hard. That's all the questions.
I'm just curious, as a physician, you're in a world that is very female and male oriented as how people practice medicine. So are you part of a clinic up for all of the intersex and all of that? As a hospitalist, though, you treating people in the hospital.
Right. So the group that I'm connected with, the research group I have, they actually have patients that they see on a regular basis. I don't have a panel of intersex patients. I don't actually have an outpatient practice. I've strongly debated that because of the access to care. but I've also learned that if I were to do that, my ability to affect change in the community and teach physicians how to do this diminishes. So it's kind of like a darn if you do, darn if you don't. Where can I have the most effect on doing good?
So it certainly, medicine is very, women have this kind of heart attack, men have, it's all very so structured and, I love the, individual part of it, evidence-based medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be careful with
Is
this
that very
evidence-based.
challenging at times?
It is, yes. Have I noticed a change, a difference between transition, before transition and after? Absolutely. I am treated very much differently as a woman than as a male. And I have to defend myself constantly with calling all my colleagues. But in terms of where I'm working at, so I work at Holy Family Hospital and Sacred Heart. I've been very well supported by pretty much everybody all the way up and down from executive level all the way down to local. So they all know about me.
Good or bad, huh?
Good. All good things. All good things. And it's stuff like this that, I think really is helpful with helping the community, but also, so for example, was it last year, I taught a group of providers out of Oregon. And that presentation went really, really well. And they changed several of practice paradigms as a consequence of that. That's the thing that I'm looking for, is having the most good with getting to the most people as possible.
We'll keep fighting the good fight.
Oh, yeah.
As far as like what you're doing, are you looking at getting funding, or what kind of funding are you looking, like, are you needing, or
So
is there any kind of like funding that you have or that you're trying to get that's out there, or are we?
The answer is yes and no. A lot of the funding has completely disappeared.
Yeah.
So there was an executive decision that dropped a lot of the funding. So will that come back? Probably. But when I actually accepted that position to lead the intersex care, they basically said, we don't have any funding. I said, that's fine. This is more important than funding. So, vote. Yeah, sometimes we just have to wait things out, and I want to make sure that nothing is lost in the process. And actually to have this wave moving forward so that we can hit the ground running when the time is right. Any other questions?
You did.
Go ahead.
I just want to say I've spent much of my life in the Christian evangelical circles, so that's kind of where my background is. So I just wanted, because this, as we all know, ties in, like you get a lot of pushback and a lot of hatred from those circles. Just put a plug in for the book that she has there on the bottom left by Megan DeFranza. If you're ever facing questions on how to talk about this topic in those circles, that is an awesome book. I heard Megan speak at Whitworth, and she just did a fabulous job, and I've recommended that book so many times.
Part of what I've had to do with this is I've had to pull from all sorts of different sources. Like, how do I answer questions from various groups? So, yeah, this one's intersex theology and the Bible. Yeah, there's so many different ways and perspectives to address this. The statement that I said earlier about it's not one thing, it's all the things together. That is certainly the most important part of it. Every time I go down one rabbit hole, it just keeps going and going and going. And creating that foundation of that commonality between all humans is really important in my mind.
I like one thing I said earlier about empathy versus education, of how empathy, like you have to have that connection first for people being willing to be educated. In our own personal, like religious community, we've had to take that approach where instead of taking a fighting stance, it's more like a invitation, like come get to know us. And we welcome honest questions. And as they get to know us, they realize, oh, she's not scary. She's just a person.
Oh, I'm very scared.
Yeah. But I found that
I share pictures of otters.
yeah, giving them that grace where, you know, that growth mentality where, you know, somebody might be either prejudiced or ignorant, but a lot of our people are good and will eventually willing to learn. Like I've learned over the past decade or so of, you know, supporting you, and if I'm giving myself that grace of, you know, that growth, I should give that grace to other people. So it's not hopeless. I personally don't believe in like cutting people off unless they're being really terrible. But, you know, but a lot of people just simply are coming from a different paradigm, and it just takes a lot of patience and love and empathy and connection.
I've had to invite a lot of people into spaces that I feel uncomfortable with them being in, and being a bridge between these situations is incredibly important. I feel safe in doing so. Not everyone else feels safe, and that is okay. My goal is to be as best a representative of you as I possibly can, and I hope I accomplish that.
Well, I can see how much work you put pulling all of this together. It's great, and I appreciate it so much. I'm also wondering how can mainstream public get this kind of information? Is it even out there yet? That's one question I have. And the other is kind of a comment to you two, because I'm in education and I am experiencing groups of haters who are trying to nullify the existence of this, and that it's just a binary system, and it's clearly not. The science is behind it. So are you just really cutting edge on this, or is there more of this being researched at a national level, a world level?
When I was talking to my team, and this includes several universities out east, I'm not saying their names because I want to make sure that they stay safe, but they've been in the news lately. But to make sure that, how do we fight against or push against this tide of suppression? Can we get this stuff out there? So in terms of my team, they actually looked at me and said, you're one of the few physicians that's doing what I'm doing. So I need more people to do what I'm doing. I'm one person, and we need more.
Because I think it was about 5 years ago, I did some research because I wanted to educate our staff at the high school that I used to work with. I'm retired now. And there was an Australian study, and that's where I found out about SOX9 and the SRY, and I brought some of that to our biology teachers and tried to, educate them. And it was like, look, it just seemed like there's such a lack of awareness, but it just makes so much sense.
Well, and
this
so
has been
we're also
going on
fighting
for
against
the
things
beginning
like
of time.
the CAS report. HHS did a horrible beat off of that, by the way. Oh, that one's disgusting. That one's an AI produced. Terrible. But it's there, it's published. I think it's HHS, gender identity or gender dysphoria or something like that. Anyway, the references are horrible. The wording is terrible. I'd rather read the CAS report, which was published earlier this last year. But that's what they're banking off of, is the CAS report. And the CAS report was very poorly done and has been critiqued against several times over. So understanding that there's these organizations and scientists and researchers that are also trying to put forth their thoughts and paradigms in this, and being able to debunk them as well as we go through this. So it's not just a moving forward, it's like, whoa, hold on a second here, stop that.
Can you share who wrote the CAS report?
CAS.
What is CAS again?
Dr. Cass.
Oh, it's a doc, okay.
Yeah.
It's from British.
Yeah, it's from the British. It was a commission report from the United Kingdom, the health services over there, and it took a 2-year study to understand, and then the language and wording was very deliberate and very dismissive of diverse individuals. And it was, the methodology was very poorly done. But as a consequence of that, but because of the length and breadth of it and the fact that it was commissioned by England, they latched onto it, and this is spread worldwide, and people are anchoring on that as the de facto standard to go off of, which it is not. Yeah.
I'm transgender, and I'm 21 years old, and it's something that honestly only really fully realized and came to terms with at the age of 20.
Sure.
And for me, I grew up very comfortable being a little girl, and so I run into this argument that the idea of my identity is invalid because it came so late in my life, and a lot of the people around me are like, this came from nowhere, and I your response, because for me, it's fluid, it's constantly changing all the time.
Dynamic.
Exactly.
It's dynamic.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you know, but I know a whole lot of people that are taking GLP-1 inhibitors to lose weight, and it's a hormone that allows them to feel more externally how they feel on the inside. I don't feel like there's anything different with taking a GLP-1 inhibitor drug to have your external self match what you feel like on the inside than somebody that is that is taking a hormone to have their external self match their internal self. And that's a really good argument when you're arguing with somebody who is, say, from a church or from another group of people who have preconceived ideas. So that to me has been a really good argument that I've used, because you're Mormon and you're taking the GLP-1 inhibitor, well, how is that any different than my child taking testosterone?
There are 80 different hormones plus in the human body.
Right.
Not just testosterone, not just estrogen, not just progesterone, there's over 80. Right, so, yeah. Any other questions?
So when we're talking about, kind of pushing effective change on a wider scale, and we're talking about in terms of kind of a spectrum, and where my mind goes back to being autistic myself is the fact that there were all of these diagnoses, as you'd say, that were individual, but then everyone came together, there was study, all of the things that were done to then put it under the spectrum. So you got PDD, and you put all these things under a spectrum so that people could get resources and could get what they needed as far as help. And to a mass public who, thinks that autism is everywhere and it's an epidemic and stuff, it's now that people are able to get the help that they need, and those individual diagnoses were put under an umbrella. So is there a way that we can push that forward in terms of intersex? And
there is. This is one of those things that's kind of like with autism. I hope with this presentation you actually can see the clues and evidences of autism in this as well. That's what's so cool about this, is it's actually applicable to a lot of different things, which to me is amazing. We are in this kind of shifting paradigm right now. Because all this stuff is so new, so abrupt, I don't remember the stat, but the amount of study that's going into genetics itself is rapidly expanding into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Wow. And that's just the field itself. So it's really cool to see all this advancing technology, but to actually have people get stuck in 1911, yeah, it's really frustrating to have that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? All right. Yeah.
Sorry, let me just wrap up my cookie.
Oh yeah, no, totally fine. You got me as a captive audience until 4.
Okay. I was just wondering, given the political climate and rollbacks of healthcare and funding for it, considering the fact that a lot of the community relies on state health insurance, do you think there is reason for a lot of the trans
community to be worried about receiving health care? Like, do you
Yes.
think that they are metaphorically running against a clock at this point?
Yes, unfortunately, that is. I hope that that changes with the midterms, where we can stem some of that loss. But it's going to be an uphill battle regardless of anything we do.
Or state will step up.
Yeah, that's my hope. Is the nice thing, at least with some of these medications, is that they're under certain circumstances are relatively cheap, but that still doesn't solve the underlying problems. Yes, access to care is appropriate, but also understanding why that access to care is important is also there as well. So it's, when I put up this slide right here, it's like, which avenue do I need to address first? And most of it is just getting the message out. Because yes, I can affect some change, but it's that cascading spiral, it's that snowball effect that's going to have that big change.
You mentioned that your team back east, made a comment to you about there needs to be more individuals like yourself out there. Why aren't there? You're teaching students. Are you asking your students or kind of pushing your students along to say, hey, be like me?
I've been pushing for several universities now locally. So I'm hoping to get connected with the UW shortly. I've talked several times to PNWU out in Yakima. They actually invited me back again next year. So.
Do you ever get to go around with the schools around here with their nursing programs when they come into the hospitals?
Yep, I actually just did a presentation at one of the local nursing colleges just last week, and then I got an invitation to go out to North Carolina in September.
Like as a trans guy here, and an individual that has worked in mental health, has worked in the hospitals here, I want to know what can be done here to make it safer for patients that I worked with. I no longer come in because I got hurt, but I was the advocate for those patients.
Yeah.
A doctor, I'm like, we're going to check for a second here. Before you come back here, you're going to listen. This is who they are. You need to know their meds, and it was just, it's not there. There's a bias that
there
needs
absolutely is.
And as a community, we need to step up and step forward to make sure that going into the hospitals are still safe.
Yeah.
Because they're not.
It's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of work that needs to be done.
What can we do to help? You said vote already. I already voted.
Yeah, no. Learning.
Well, trust me, I buy probably as many books as you do.
Good. Yeah. So learning and just networking is also the next step, and supporting the organizations that are able to make a change. Like I do support things like the local pride groups, HRC, ACLU, all these organizations that are trying to stem this tide, and talking to legislators and. Yeah.
You get to work with social workers as well?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I work with social workers.
That's another advocate. That's.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a thorn in
Many
people's
times.
Yeah. The more I do, the better it gets.
So I would like to add to that because as some of you know, I'm the editor of Spokane Pride 365. So we have a lot of trans and queer resources on here for the local area. If you want to get signed up, it's free, it comes every month. I do tons of updates. It's about 175 pages right now.
Wow.
It started with like 6 pages. Business and resources for queer and trans community, etc. Everybody on the rainbow. I have a QR code and just come to me afterwards.
Sure.
Thank you. And a lot of you already are on it, so but whoever's not.
Yeah. So I've been telling people I'm willing to talk to groups of people. I have no objections. I really try hard to make sure that this is something that's approachable for a lot of different people. So yeah.
Do you ever go into correctional facilities?
I could.
We have one on here.
Cool.
Area Heights Correctional.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right, that's you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.